All right, guys. So Peacemaker had its season 2 finale. It's pretty contentious. So let's talk about it. So I will say one thing that I really loved about this season finale was that we finally got the flashback to the moment between Harcourt and Chris. It turns out it was like a date that ended on a ship, and it was genuinely really wholesome. We see Chris get in between her beating up some guy, really showing the purity of Chris. Obviously, we're going to get to one of the more emotional scenes later, but I really liked how this scene showcased that Chris is the heartbeat of their group. He does make everybody around him better. And I like that, he makes Harcourt better. And yeah, I also like the fact that the moment between them wasn't a sex scene, which I feel like they were kind of implying it to be, but it was actually a kiss. It was a wholesome kiss. I like how that contrasts with the nature of the show, which, shows a lot of debauchery, like in the orgy scene or whatever. And that the scene that means the most to Chris isn't any of that. It's a kiss on a boat and a basically date, even if it didn't start off as a date. Then we see Chris in that prison cell, obviously because he ended up he almost killed his brother, and they killed his dad. He just doesn't feel like he deserves to be happy. He doesn't deserve his friends. He feels like everything around him dies. Honestly, same, Chris. I also don't feel like I deserve anything. Kidding, kind of, maybe. Who knows? One of the big points of criticisms for this episode is just how they treat Rick Flag Sr. It's just like, he just seems way too evil. He seems way too eager to be a part of Lex Luthor's plans. It just doesn't feel like the same character that we saw in Creature Commandos and even in Superman. It's like, I feel like after seeing him, be brothers in arms with the Bride of Frankenstein and, Dr. Phosphorus and whatnot, you would think that he would be against just throwing metahumans into salvation. You would think that he's not all that eager to be working with Lex Luthor. Now, here's the thing. I completely understand if his hatred from Chris could override his basic morality, his basic instincts. But I feel like they did not do a good job of showing him struggling with doing all of this because of his hatred for Chris. That is a thing that they could have more effectively showed. I will also say that maybe in Man of Tomorrow, we end up seeing that Rick Flag Sr. is playing 4D chess, and he actually ends up helping Superman beat Lex Luthor at some point. I don't know. Yeah, it felt very out of character for Rick Flag Sr. to be as evil as he comes off as in this video. We see him sending people into different dimensions to try to find salvation, but when he sees all the people dying, it just doesn't seem right that Rick Flag Sr. just wouldn't care about that. And he seems as evil as all of Lex Luthor's minions. But we'll see if they explain it in further, DCU projects. But I can't help but feel like it feels weird here. I will say, I think that why did I say it like that? Vigilante and Adebayo, they're a really good duo in this season. And pretty much all of their scenes where, Adebayo is trying to get Vigilante to act like a normal person. Those are all really good. We also get a really good breakup scene. I mean, it was effective, right? The scene between the two. And I like them as a couple from the first season. I just feel like we could have gotten a little bit more from them in the second season so that this breakup scene, it feels a little tacked on. In general, Adebayo's whole thing of her trying to start an agency, it's just there wasn't enough of that to make this scene feel more justified. But again, it's still really well acted and it's really well directed, and I still got emotions out of it. So it wasn't a complete failure, but they could have added more context for this. The one scene that I think is just terrible is this joking scene with Economos. He's trying to do a stand-up comedy routine. And it really is just an example of James Gunn knows when to just cut away. Because this scene would have worked if you had started seeing Economos giving a terrible joke, and then you cut away to something else. And then you cut back to it, and Economos is still giving a terrible joke. But it's like, we didn't need to hear as much of it as we did. And I think it's James Gunn thinking that, oh, this is going to be hilarious, this whole Economos giving terrible jokes bit. But it's just not. And it's awkward. And it goes on forever. Now, this scene is maybe the best scene in all of Peacemaker. And it is the scene where all of his friends, tackle him at that motel and tie him up to a chair or whatever. Did they tie him up to the chair? I can't remember. But basically, like, Adebayo is reaching out to him, explaining how he, in Peacemaker's eyes, he, like, destroys everybody around him. But she helps him see that he's actually a shining light. He's a sun in the world, and his bright light actually helps people. Anyways, I'm not as good at describing this as Adebayo is, but yeah, the scene where Peacemaker realizes that he like, even though yes, he did kill his family, he has still helped and bettered people's lives, and that's kind of what the season is all about, obviously. And I think they do a good job showing that in the flashback with him in Harcourt. And yeah, this scene was very emotional, very well acted. And I think it's probably the best scene in all of Peacemaker. And so it's just like, yeah, like scenes like this, like I totally get everybody's criticisms of this episode, but it's like at the end of the day, when like the overarching plot thread of the season is wrapped up like this, and I get choked up and I get emotional, I can't really sit here and act like it was a disaster of an episode and that I overall didn't like the episode, because I did. Then we also see them form a checkmate, which is a thing in the comics, apparently. I remember checkmate being a thing in Smallville. I don't remember that much about it, but I remember it from that. But so yeah, Adebayo and the 11th Street Kids, and also Judo Master and Sasha Cordeau, was that her name? The cyborg lady. They're all a part of this new organization, which I guess is going to be the Good Argus moving forward in the DCU. It seems like the type of organization that can just show up in anything. Like, I can totally see Adebayo or Harcourt now showing up in Lanterns. I could see them showing up in Clayface or something. Like, it seems like they're going to be a staple in the DCU moving forward. And then we get the final ending, which is Rick Flag Sr. throwing Peacemaker into Salvation. And again, I can totally understand Rick Flag Sr. doing all the evil things that he's done this season, working with Lex Luthor, sacrificing a lot of his agents. If it was the case that he was doing that against his own moral instincts because he wanted to get Peacemaker trapped in here, I just feel like it should have been more explicitly explored in the episode. But anyways, overall, I enjoyed the season. I even enjoyed this finale, but I definitely agree with a lot of the criticisms in that it was all just paced kind of weirdly, right? Like, I definitely still think that the first 4 episodes, I don't know, I feel like what those episodes achieved could have been accomplished in 2 seasons. I definitely think we should have gotten more of Chris and his family in the second dimension. We should have seen him and his brother like go out, do a mission together, really explore their bond. I feel like there could have been more of a thing of his brother and his dad like slowly discovering that he's not their Peacemaker. I feel like that could have been done better. Obviously, we could have explored Adebayo and her girlfriend way more. They should have explored Rick Flag Sr.'s character more. We should have seen him slowly start going against his morals more and more throughout the season, and that being more of a conflict for him so that we could eventually understand why he would do what he does. And this final episode definitely just, it was paced weirdly. One of the things that I always commend James Gunn on in that I feel like he's great at needle drops and having them feel more like musical scores as opposed to just, licensed music that heavily sticks out in what you're watching. The needle drops in this episode were bad. There were too many of them. They stood out to me and not in a good way. And it was also just paced weirdly. It's funny because I've been asking for longer episodes. This was a longer episode for sure, but I don't feel like it was utilized properly. So anyways, I totally understand a lot of people's criticisms. At the end of the day, though, I do feel like the conclusions that people have come to, I think, are a little exaggerated. Like, I keep on seeing people say, like, man, this episode is proof that James Gunn was not the right choice to run the DCU. And I'm just like, well, I mean, I still liked Creature Commandos, and I really like Superman. I like the Penguin, which, just to be clear, it is totally fair to bring up the Penguin in this, because even though James Gunn didn't make the Penguin and he wasn't the showrunner or the director on it, it was still made under his DC studios. And when a studio head knows when to get involved in a project, a good studio head also knows when not to get involved in a project. So whichever way you slice it, James Gunn does deserve credit for The Penguin. So The Penguin is fantastic. And I still liked Peacemaker Season 2, even though I agree with a lot of the criticisms. At the end of the day, that core emotional story of Peacemaker finding his own self-worth and Peacemaker accepting that he is a good person and that he is a good force in the world and for his friends and all of that, that story worked for me. So I still liked Season 2, even in the weakest DCU project or DC Studios project so far. Even in the weakest one, at the end of the day, I still liked it. And the core emotional story worked for me. I don't know, a lackluster finale that doesn't wrap everything up perfectly, that's not going to make me be like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. James Gunn was a terrible choice. Now, if you've hated all of these projects, then of course, it's totally understandable for you to be like, man, I don't think that James Gunn is the right person to run all of this. But that's just not where I'm at. Where I definitely will criticize James Gunn, though, is, dude, you need to stop talking as much as you are. Like, James Gunn said that there was going to be a really, really big cameo. And so we've been going into this final episode being like, oh my gosh, there's going to be a really, really big cameo. And then there just wasn't one? Why did you say that? Like, I guess looking back on it, the really, really big cameo was Lex Luthor? What? When you say there's going to be a really, really big cameo, guess what? We're thinking that Superman is going to come up. We're thinking that we're going to see David Cornsweet. We're thinking that you might, reveal who your Batman is going to be. Like, it's a multiverse season, so it's like DCU actors could have popped up. We could have seen Henry Cavill or Ben Affleck or Gal Gadot. Like, that's what people are going to think of when you say there's going to be a really, really big cameo. And by the way, I don't care about cameo stuff, okay? Look, they got me with No Way Home. I was in the theater, I was clapping, and I was hooting and hollering. I had, oh my gosh, I have goosebumps on my arm because fucking Tobey Maguire ran in from a Doctor Strange portal. Oh my god, let me clap like a seal and go, oh, I know who that is. I've seen the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. He was in those movies, now he's in this one. Oh, like, okay. And I'm not judging anybody. But, like, I was one of you when No Way Home. But by the time I was watching Deadpool and Wolverine, guess what? I was over it. I was like, okay, you need to actually be a good movie, right? That's, at the end of the day, that's what I care about. Am I watching a good movie? Am I watching a good TV show? I don't care about cameo stuff. But you're trying to sell your show with cameo stuff. So I'm not going to sit here and blame people for being disappointed that there wasn't a really big cameo in the final episode. I can't sit here and blame people for thinking that. Second thing, James Gunn has been going on and on about how, oh my god, Peacemaker Season 2 is really going to set up Man of Tomorrow. Guess what? That's going to make people think that this season finale is going to be a big, massive episode of television. Oh my god, we're going to see Superman, we're going to see Brainiac, we're going to see Darkseid, like whatever Man of Tomorrow ends up being. It seems like it's going to be about Brainiac. But like people are going to think, like people's minds are going to go into these crazy places. And when you get to the season finale and it's really more dramatic than anything, it's really more about wrapping up, the emotional themes that we've been exploring this season. And yeah, I guess there's a little bit of Portal stuff being like, oh, we're finding a new dimension for, a prison for metahumans. Like, obviously I can see how that would play into Man of Tomorrow, but people are going to be disappointed by that. You can't, like, and again, like, I totally understand that a lot of people's disappointment is James Gunn's fault for overhyping it. So, look, I still like James Gunn. I still overall like this season. I still think he's the right person to run DC. Now, by the way, the real test of that is going to be when we watch Lanterns and Supergirl. Because I will say this. If Lanterns comes out and it feels like James Gunn's type of humor and it feels like James Gunn's type of thing and it's not what they said it was going to be, which is a True Detective style crime drama or whatever, then I'll say, SpaghettiOs, if we watch Supergirl. And it just feels like more Guardians of the Galaxy type stuff, then I will say, SpaghettiOs. But as of right now, I feel like the claims that, oh my gosh, this is a disaster, James Gunn is a disaster for DC, I think they're a little exaggerated. I mostly think he needs to get off of Twitter or Threads or wherever he's on. Stop overhyping your stuff. Just let it happen, you know? So anyways, those are my thoughts on Peacemaker Season 2 as a whole and my thoughts on the finale. Let me know what you think. And also, while you're here, like, comment, subscribe, and goodbye.